Okay, what can you 3D print? You can 3D print anything from cups to, gun frames. Tsunami, or over here in, the Cayman Islands, you get a hurricane that comes through, tears everything down. And again, literally less than 24 hours or 48 hours, you can have several homes 3D printed out of concrete or any other material.
You're saying that there's a potential in the future that we would just be able to print our own ASIC mining chips?
Absolutely.
Here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited for this one. I have Max from Eden, and Max, just go ahead and give an intro about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I'm glad to be on the Renegades pod. This is really cool. But I'm Max. I'm the creator of Eden 3D, and our goal is to build the tools for you to manifest your thoughts into things. So, just a regular Bitcoin pleb, like everybody else, Bitcoin maximalist, and really trying to give back in the spaces as much as we can. Once you're in for so long, like, again, for yourself starting this podcast and other people as well, you start to find ways where you can contribute back and continue to grow the entire Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah, for sure. And so with Eden 3D printing, I mean, we'll get into more of like why your company is so interesting. But first, I mean, let's just talk about I guess the philosophy of 3D printing. We'll just talk about briefly what exactly it is for anybody that doesn't know, although you probably should know. So we'll talk about that real briefly, and then we'll go into, okay, why is it crucial for people to be able to use these things? We'll go from there.
Yeah. So 3D printing is a different style of manufacturing where, very similar to a two-dimensional printer, you are utilizing two axes going back and forth to print your paper. So a piece of paper rolls through and ink gets put on the paper. With a 3D printer, it's the same process, except we've now added a up and down known as the Z axis. So you can build things in a localized kind of one-off prototype manner, which is completely different than the traditional manufacturing process, such as injected molding, where you have a form and you shove some plastic or metal in there, and it forms to that actual large steel form that you've made. So that's really the major differentiating factor with 3D printing. It's very similar to welding, actually. If anybody knows some very basic ideas of what welding is, you got some wire goes through a gun, and it spits out some metal on the end, and you build whatever you are welding. So it's a very similar process.
Sure. So okay, and somebody who's against what you and I believe, somebody that wants only the government to have guns and doesn't think that we should be able to have firearms to defend ourselves. I mean, what would be your response to that? What's your philosophical motivation for doing what you're doing? Because this is a very not only unique industry to be in, but an extremely controversial one as well.
Yeah, you're making a big leap from general 3D or general manufacturing 3D printing over to actually what individually people can 3D print, which is really cool. Once you have that style of machine, such as like an Ender 3 or one of our machines or a Perusa, the whole space has gone from, I find it very similar to the computer revolution, where you had computers in the 50s and 60s, the size of a room that only had 100 megabytes worth of storage. And slowly it just got compacted down and improved on its processing power and therefore storage capabilities as well. 3D printing kind of started as a layering technology. It builds on top of itself, as I was saying. It builds on top of the Z axis since about the mid 80s. And they were the size of a room. The room that you're in right now, the room that I'm in, or any of your listeners and viewers are right now. Slowly but surely, they've gotten condensed and reduced down in size and improved in the process. And now we have stuff that's there's several different styles, but mainly you have what is called a FDM printer, which is fluid deposit modeling, and that puts it through a nozzle and therefore builds it layer by layer. These were known as rep rafts, and they came about in like 2004, 2005, 6 or so. And they're a desktop, like the laptop version of a computer. They're a desktop manufacturer at home. Therefore, leading into your question, okay, what can you 3D print? You can 3D print anything from cups to, gun frames if you want. And my personal opinion on that is, for all of our federal agents listening, to us, say hi and wave and stuff. But
it's all the alphabet boys, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so sorry, but the cat's out of the bag, and you can't stop people from building what they want. The moment that you put a firing pin into a piece of plastic, such as a 3D printed Glock frame or something like that, then we start to cross the line, and it's up to the person on that end that is taking that risk if they so choose. But there's nothing wrong with printing what you want. It's just G code, which is the base layer of what the machine takes as instructions, and you can't censor instructions like that. You can try to, but everything is FOSS, free and open source. These machines are extremely cheap to build. You can buy an Ender 3 right now for $199. The material itself, which is called filament, it's just basic plastic. This material on a spool, 1 kilogram, so 2.2 pounds, is like $15 to $20. You can buy some nicer stuff, but all in, to get started on manufacturing, self-sovereignty tools, you can get started for less than $250. No different than setting up your own Bitcoin full node.
Yeah.
So there's really nothing that you can stop right now. Information natively wants to be free, and these, at the end of the day, are just digital files. It now is upon the user to go and act on those intentions that they have set out, and therefore apply that free and open information to go and build what they want. So personally, for me, look, I'm just building the machines and putting the tool in your hands. You can go and print flowers, go and print guns, whatever you want. But you are free to manifest whatever thought into a thing that you see fit.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think this really, before we move on to the next point, this really just addresses the crux of the libertarian anarcho-capitalist argument. It's really, if you're not harming anybody, then why does anybody have a right to harm you? And, most people, we forget how easy it is for us to basically kill each other if we wanted to. My car is a weapon. I have, and most people don't want to do that because most people are decent, at least in that regard. And to just for a state to come in and say, okay, all of the millions of people who live in this arbitrary landmass where they were born no longer have the right to defend themselves with this specific weapon, just doesn't make any sense. And the government, all the politicians, guns are used to defend them. So that's a little, hypocritical in my opinion. So moving on.
Well, go ahead. Let me interrupt you real quick. Let me interrupt you. Now we need F-15s and nukes. So we need.
That's true.
We need a little upgrade or so, but we're working on that. We're trying to 3D print some creative things like that. But yeah, it is. Yeah, I agree 100%. You can't take away your freedom of self-sovereignty there.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes me think of one of my favorite quotes from Jefferson, which is, I think he said something along the lines of, when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. And we are definitely not free right now, in my opinion, at least in most places in the US and the world. So yeah. All right. Well, hey, I'm happy we talked about kind of the philosophical perspective on things. Moving on, I mean, the ball's in your court. I know we've got Bitcoin in 3D printing. We've got, other details and other things that can be printed. But, I mean, go ahead. Let's just go ahead and Bitcoin.
Yeah. So basically what we are specifically doing at Eden is, again, our mantra is, allowing you to manifest your thoughts into things. But again, is what we just touched on. What are your thoughts? Do you have positive thoughts or do you have negative thoughts? And we can't control that, or we can only do our best to positively influence that you have positive thoughts like that. But specifically what we're doing is applying our knowledge and drive towards building the tools, both on the hardware and software, to improve the 3D printing workflow. So currently, it's kind of a pain to actually 3D print. To be honest with you, you need several different hardware devices, most of which people have, but you do need some new devices as well, such as a 3D printer. The second is you need certain software to go and create these designs, or even go and make these designs that you think of, or you go and find on the internet, and actually make them readable to the 3D printer itself. And then third, you obviously need the proper materials and tooling to actually go and execute on that building process. And then above all, right, the overall encompassing aspect is you need the knowledge of how to put all this really together. So the current workflow is you have a 3D printer and you have your laptop or your desktop computer, and you are running a CAD program which allows you to make 3D renderings. And therefore, you can go and export that into G code. And from there, you put this into a second piece of software on your desktop, which is called a slicing application. And this actually makes that G code, those directions, machine readable to your actual printer. I actually misspoke there. It's actually, you're going to export it as like an STL file, or some type of a model of which you're going to be able to have the machine read, and then therefore it's going to generate that as left, right, up, down, extrude this instructions to build that. So you actually need two forms of software, and of course, your 3D printer and the material itself. So the filament, the actual plastic that you're going to build, again, whatever you're choosing to print. But what we're doing is essentially compressing all of that down into one single unit. So our Eden 1 machine is a full desktop computer with a 3D printer on the inside. So you have, in an all-in-one device, a full desktop computer, which again is connected to the internet, and you can go and either find designs online, or you can, again, run a CAD program. You can slice that design that you've just made to be machine readable. You can go and therefore send it to the printer and actually print. And then therefore, once you've printed that design into a physical thing, you can either go and send it and share it on online with anybody that you want, or you can actually go and physically sell that part somewhere, or give it to somebody because you've now printed it. So I like to think of this as the kind of the first multi-dimensional full desktop computer, where you can actually reach into the computer and pull out that design that you just thought of. So it's really trying to improve the workflow, where I personally found frustration getting into this space many years ago, and I just wanted a nice, concise box where I could design, slice, print, share, and accept payment.
Like an all-in-one
for any of my designs.
Yeah. Okay, right on. Very cool. Okay, and I'd like to ask actually the same question I asked you at the Bitcoin conference, but I think it's worthy of discussing on here, at least briefly. As this new innovation makes people more free, allows people to defend themselves more, spreads. They can't, you were saying the cat's out of the bag. They can't stop it.
Yep.
It's totally decentralized. Can you move into that more about kind of like the battle of the will here with the state and a decentralized 3D printing network?
Yeah, and that's exactly a excellent pivot into another topic that I know we had on our brief notes to cover there, which is really being able to distribute and decentralize manufacturing. So with that injection molding process we've had for God knows how long, 100, 200 years at this point, you have it at one central place, and therefore everything is shipped out from there. So that's one point of attack. And we did experience that last year, right? From everything coming from China, the borders were closed. The shipping containers were not being put on, the transport boats. They're not boats; they're ginormous shipping fleets. But it really cut the supply chain down. So the biggest impact in my opinion, and why we're so focused on hardware and also integrating the proper software is decentralizing manufacturing and then therefore digitizing material. You don't have to ship anything over borders anymore. You can just share these files through, if you really want to be private, this is down in our roadmap, very, very far away, but eventually you're going to be able to send these files through ham radio. And how are you going to stop a ham radio signal to receive, to receive a digital design to go and build something, and then therefore you print it locally right on site. You assemble whichever components else that are needed there. Most are 3D printed. Some you're going to have to outsource a little bit, but you still have that capability to distribute and therefore decentralize manufacturing. And that's what's so revolutionary in this part of the fourth industrial revolution. There's many other things included with 3D printing there, but that's really a push towards liberty and freedom for the individual, and getting out of that statist mindset for having everything being centralized. And the same thing for the mining operations right now coming out of China.
Yeah.
What happens when China chooses to block over those borders and not release any of those hardware? I mean, imagine in 20 years, I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but imagine in 20 years when you can 3D print a silicon chip right at home. I mean, that totally changes the game, right? So
Yeah,
I know we're very early in this, right? We're very early in this process, of course, but to be able to 3D print and therefore locally manufacture anything, you completely disrupt, any style of traditional tax structures on manufacturers that the government and state, puts on to, again, just central points of failure in the supply chain. It's really impactful.
Yeah. I mean, geez, I'm thinking in 20 years, we're going to have our citadels, right? We have our own property, our own food. We have our own money. We have our own 3D printers. It's like, what are you going to do to us? You know what I mean? We're the future is very bright, and in many ways, it kind of sucks living in this time period because of all the tyranny and all that. But in many other ways, it's a really beautiful time to be alive, and it's so exciting. And I think you bring up a fantastic point about how basically the production of we'll call them protection weapons, like firearms or whatever, has been so centralized, and they're also a part of the military industrial complex. So they're at the whim of whatever any nation state wants, but 3D printing just totally changes the game. Are you saying that it could be, I mean, for those who are not very familiar with Bitcoin, I'll just explain this very briefly. With Bitcoin mining, there's typically a very big shortage of ASIC mining chips, and they're all generally made in China, right? And as a result, people have to order them like 6 months in advance, to my understanding. I'm not like an expert on Bitcoin mining, but you're saying that there's a potential in the future that we would just be able to print our own ASIC mining chips?
Absolutely.
Wow. Man, that's unbelievable. Yeah. That would change Bitcoin so much. The hash rate would go up a lot.
Yeah, you feel that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You feel that potential. There's already a company in Israel currently that, again, going back to the computer kind of revolutionary model, same thing for the 3D printing revolutionary, change that we've experienced. There is a very large, very expensive 3D printer that 3D prints computer boards, basically. And we can actually do that right now. I don't mean to get in the weeds necessarily, but just for one little point, on a regular FDM 3D printer on one of our machines, on a cheap vendor machine, on a Perusa, whichever, you can actually 3D print a very basic circuit board where you just lay down some conductive filament and therefore on each end maybe have a button that turns on a light. So right now we can go and do that with specialized material. Again, everything's available on Amazon or off the shelf like that. But currently, right now, I mean, just imagine if you can make something. And we built some things in the past, some boxes where it was a magnet that turned on a light. When the lid was on or off. So very basic, circuits like that. But again, you just let time and some human ingenuity take hold of this over the next 5, 10, 20 years. You can already see where the possibilities go exactly into silicon chips for ASICs.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at technology's historical advancement, there's things typically get much cheaper and much more efficient as time goes on. There's like Moore's law, right? So, yeah, absolutely, very exciting. As far as what other things we can do with 3D printers, I mean, what are some other interesting possibilities that we could use them for in the future? I've heard of people, I have no idea how this would work, but I've heard of people potentially like 3D printing houses.
Yeah,
I've heard of 3D printing meat as well, which our buddy Bill Gates seems to be really into. I don't want to eat that. Not interested in that.
I don't. I don't really want to eat it either. I'll be honest with you, but
I'll just take the
yeah,
meat, the normal meat.
I'll just take a good old ribeye or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a tremendous amount of opportunity at both different materials and different scales at which you can 3D print. Again, it's just G code, and all G code is your X, Y, and your Z coordinates. Okay, which is up, down, left, right, back and forth. The main impact to that is what's your nozzle? Okay, what are you pushing through on your build plate? Are you pushing concrete in a 20 by 20 foot machine so you could 3D print a house in less than 24 hours in Guatemala, or maybe in the Philippines or something, if a tsunami, or over here in the Cayman Islands, you get a hurricane that comes through, tears everything down, and in again literally less than 24 hours or 48 hours, you can have several homes 3D printed out of concrete or any other material built.
Do you know sorry, I'm just curious. Do you know around how much that would cost? Like, is there a rough estimate? Let's say maybe a 1,200 square foot, like single family home.
Yeah, I told you I had a couple hard metrics for you. I don't have any of those metrics, but I know it is significantly cheaper to 3D print a house than it is to actually build it in the legacy, more traditional system.
I mean, you're not even paying for labor.
It's at least 70% cheaper. Again, not only do you save on the time, but the actual process itself to go and execute and therefore build all these, your walls and your angles and the windowsills and stuff like that. Of course, you have to go and input and furnish all of these, necessities. Again, your window frames, your door frames, and all that. But the raw structure itself is, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, please don't trust me, go ahead and verify it like our whole space. But if I'm remembering correctly, it's like $4,000 to 3D print a 1,000 square foot house or something like that.
Wow.
It's extremely cheap, and same thing for just general 3D printing itself. You're cutting out a lot of the labor, and you're cutting out a lot of the upfront necessary hardware and infrastructure to make your stamping process or your injection molded molds themselves are orders of magnitude more expensive than the actual milk gallon jug that you're actually building. So there's a massive upfront cost for that. But if you could just 3D print a milk jug, or if you can 3D print a home, or again even 3D printing a human organ. Okay, we already do that right now as people 3D print kidneys and valves and all sorts of different human organ and other features that
you're saying
needed.
If I needed a kidney, like right now today, they could literally print out a kidney and put it in my body.
I don't take my words. Definitely take it with a grain of salt. I don't know what the time frame on that is, and I'm not sure on the actual mechanisms of which you could actually receive, that. But yes, they do 3D print human organs right now, and I'm sure if all the conditions are perfectly correct, you could receive that, within a extremely shortened duration manner, in a much faster manner than being on a waiting list or something. But right there, think how revolutionary.
Yeah, we live in the future.
People that are in,
yeah.
Of course. Think how impactful that can be for people that have been waiting for years for a kidney or a liver or whatever they're waiting for like that. And you're telling me that I take a little bit of your stem, your cells out of your body, and I grow it properly and let it propagate, and then therefore we apply that in, again, the G code method through X, Y, and Z coordinates, and 2 days or 3 days later, I got a live kidney or something like that. I mean, it's just miraculous. It really is.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. It's mind blowing. I almost don't even. I can't imagine like going back in time 20 years ago and saying like, we can 3D print your kidney if you need us to.
Yeah,
it's just pretty nuts.
Totally wild.
Yeah, and it makes
totally
you wonder like what further innovations are going to be happening with this, because this is, I believe you said earlier on, it's almost like the internet in the early days. I mean, this stuff is so new, and it's all decentralized. There's no, single point of failure that can stop 3D printing in general. It's just really exciting to think about what more could be done with this industry.
And again, our actual machine is connected to the internet, but you don't have to have the 3D printer connect. And most 3D printers today are not connected at all to the internet. But what is stopping somebody to have a thought in their mind, go onto their computer, draw it up in CAD, slice it, and then therefore go and print it an hour later? You're not connected to anything. There is no outside source to censor any of your thoughts into that thing. So there's literally nothing stopping people to go and, like you're saying, have a Glock 17 frame in your hand and taking calipers and going through all of the minute details and matching that, copy for copy, and building their own, and then therefore going and putting the internals in there and having a spare frame, right? There's literally nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Yeah,
of course, there's nothing wrong with that, and the possibilities to improve people in your biggest hurdle here is your educational process, right? It's obviously getting the 3D printers in people's homes. I told you I had a couple metrics. There's only about 800,000 3D printers sold every year, and most of those are large industrial printers. Now we are beginning to scale that up at a much more rapid rate with the cheaper models coming out of China, and again, everything is open source, so people can go build them themselves. So that is obviously not incorporated into any of these metrics. And there's an even smaller number of actual 3D printing CAD designers available on the market place. So just imagine, if there was only less than 1 million iPhones being sold every single year, right? How early would you be in the smartphone mobile revolution? Same thing for, again, going back to the large computer rooms, to your desktop, to your laptop, revolutions there. There was one point where there was only 1 million desktop computers sold, let alone, maybe 50,000, large IBM machines in the 60s or mainframes, back then. So as we continue to reduce in size, compact everything down, and therefore allow it to be accessible to other people, especially in remote areas, the possibilities are absolutely endless for just exploding on not only, a distributed network of 3D printers around in local and rural areas, remote areas, but also the knowledge behind that as well. So if you have a 3D printer, well, naturally you're going to start playing around, slicing designs, go on the internet, find some designs and, figure out, you want it big, small, and then you're going to take the step and say, how do I actually draw something myself? I want to add, this little, notch here, or I want to put a handle on this. So you're going to improve the, computer aided design labor market as well. So the possibilities here are quite endless. I like to think that with 3D printing and CAD designing, and therefore the different materials and scales at which you can build things, you're kind of compounding infinity on top of infinity. So very similar again to Bitcoin, compounding on top of another potentially infinite network, which is just the general internet. It's really quite endless in its possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And the two are absolutely similar. I mean, the supply chain is centralized right now and it's used against us. And so is the monetary system. It's centralized and it's used against us. And I mean, technology isn't all that great, right? I mean, this thing is basically a tracking device and I hate it in many ways, but at the same time, there are some really beautiful things that come with technology too, that liberate human beings and just make life better for us in general. So it's kind of a love-hate sort of a thing. I mean, any other, I mean, you know a lot more about this stuff than I do. Are there any more interesting things you want to get off your chest? The ball's in your court.
Yeah, I know, kind of elaborating on your point that you're just making there, we did very briefly discuss this before, but with Bitcoin, we have distributed money. With 3D printing now, it's truly distributed manufacturing. You can source these parts pretty much anywhere remotely. And again, with the right knowledge, assemble them together and start building something in the middle of the African Sahara with the right power source, down in Mexico and stuff like that. Don't worry, when we begin to shipping, I know we talked at BitBlock Boom, you got your name on one of the first 7 that will be delivering. So definitely I will keep you in the loop when we are ready to start delivering for sure. But
awesome.
Again, just the amazing possibilities on 3D printing like that. There's a company out in California, again, more of a Silicon Valley startup, but they're actually 3D printing rockets, full titanium or whatever the space material that they are requiring for that to be as robust to take all that stress from the heat and pressure. They're literally 3D printing a rocket from absolutely nothing to about like a 15-foot or a 20-foot tall piece of metal in about 72 hours with rocket fuel shooting through it.
That is nuts.
So that is absolutely nuts. It's a ginormous 3D printer. It's quite impressive in its footprint and also in its capabilities. Again, like I said, it's printing titanium and other required materials to, again, be as robust as needed for the certain temperatures that it's reaching and the pressures that are endured. But their goal is to be the first rocket company to bring people back from Mars. So they're going to be shipping that machine over to Mars and then therefore 3D printing the rocket on Mars and then bringing people back. So again, whether you're printing human organs to the coffee mugs that we're drinking out of to 3D printing rockets, it is quite impressive for the capabilities that are yet to be seen.
Yeah, that's very impressive. I mean, Don't get me started on NASA though, because that's a whole other
That's a whole
rabbit hole. Yeah, but
yeah. It's a whole nother rabbit hole for sure.
yeah, but I mean, hey man, that's really awesome stuff. Really happy, you were able to give us some details on like what it would be like to start off with getting one, and the costs, and 3D printing houses and rockets and human organs. Um, Also very interesting that they started off, just like computers, super big, and, getting
Yep.
smaller and smaller and smaller every year, more efficient every year, and cheaper as well. So can you go ahead and just share how, we can get in contact with you about Eden, and yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Just go check us out at our website, eden3d.io. We got some products that are coming out as well, and our distributed network, Eden 3D Network. So we are going to be able to have users, designers, and 3D printers all coordinate in a distributed like fashion, and be able to build things that whatever the user wants and desires, and everybody's compensated on Bitcoin in Lightning. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Check out our Twitter as well, Eden 3D Printer, and we will be actually at BitBlock Boom. Our next target goal is to. I know you're going to be there as well. Our
Yep.
next target goal is to have a machine and a couple other products available for purchase down there, and everybody can join in and check out what we have to offer. We will be also doing a workshop down there as well. I work with Gary on coordinating 3D printing workshop. So it's just a basic introduction to 3D printing on that Friday, I believe. And it's just figuring out, okay, what do you need? How do I use a CAD program? How do I use a slicing program? Just the entire workflow. That's a free course, and that'll be Friday in Dallas at BitBlock Boom. But yeah, check us out at eden3d.io, on Twitter, Eden3D Printer, and you can check me out as well. I'm fully government doxxed on my Twitter handle. I probably need to change that, but it's Maxwell Sikorski. I'm sure you can put that in the show notes or something like that if you want. But again,
Absolutely.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me on the pod. I want to offer this to you as well and your listeners. I will put this up on our site that in future products, if you put in Renegades in the coupon code, you'll get a 5% off discount as well. So a little incentive for
Awesome.
your
Cool.
users as well and listeners to kind of check us out. But again, Andrew, thank you so much for doing this. I will be very excited to see you once again down in Dallas.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm pumped. And yeah, that's great about the discount code there. Very cool.
Of course.
I think it's great that you have a node, a Bitcoin node in your 3D printers. That's
yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
We got to talk about that real quick, because if anybody into Bitcoin is listening right now, like, how badass is that? That not only do you have a 3D printer, but you have a node in the printer. Yeah.
Yeah. So the real reason why I did that is kind of what I talked with you before. Honestly, I kind of want to hide that shit inside of stuff like that for people. So for the ones that are into Bitcoin but not 3D printing, oh, of course, it's a full desktop computer. I can use all my Bitcoin stuff on there. I'm not saying like don't run Samurai Whirlpool and other privacy things on there. Of course, that should be on a dedicated piece of hardware. But for your general use, like check out your, run your own node and check out the mempool on your own device. Yeah, why not? Put that stuff on there. And same thing for people in 3D printing, but they have no idea what Bitcoin is. Well, guess what? When the time does come, and we know that it will come, it's already there, fully running and set up in the background, and you're good to go. And the beauty of that is, again, going into that workflow and the distributed model of 3D printing. Same thing for Bitcoin. It's a distributed monetary system. And if you do want to sell your designs, most of the stuff is 99% available and free on the internet. But for the people that spend hundreds of hours drawing these monstrosity castles and very detailed stuff, you should be compensated.
Sure.
Why not be compensated in sats? And therefore, you can receive those Bitcoin and verify that payment right on that device. Same thing for a physical delivery. You can go and sell that part. They can scan a QR code right on your device, and therefore the payment is already complete. It's totally done. You verified it with your own nodes. So that's why we're incorporating Bitcoin in there. Again, distributed money, it's got to be connected to distributed manufacturing. It's a match made in heaven.
Yeah, few understand. I think
Yes.
you're ahead of your time here with the competition. I mean, how unique is that there's a node in that 3D printer? It's really awesome, super unique. Yeah. All right, man. Well,
Yeah,
hey,
thank you very, very much.
absolutely. I greatly look forward to seeing you in Texas for BitBlock Boom. And again, really appreciate you coming on. And yeah, cheers, man.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll see you. Thanks.
Peace.